you need to start to lock down the number of people who have access to sensitive, important information about your technology and your services that has real import to U.S. citizens' data. We can't have a breach. And here's a way for you to go in and just wipe any deck you want clear and just use this little AI flag to say why you did it, even though it really is more of a matter of national security. I feel like the AI flag is now being flown to cover up a lot of things, and we're not even hearing about it, literally, like people losing their jobs, and it doesn't even pop the news. I mean, Shark Week with John Cena pops higher. I'm not kidding. Like, you see that story first, and then it's like, boom, 10,000 layoffs in the tech sector. We're just swimming right now. We're swimming in a real word soup, narrative soup, and we're going to have to find the bottom of the bowl. We're going to have to dig to the bottom of the bowl, and it's going to come real quick, and I think quicker than we think.
Grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
I want to know what your name, what your badge number is, and I want to know why it is you donated $40 million to an Iranian charity just 3 days before buying 2 ladders.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying this guy was in a BlackRock commercial. I'll just start there. Right off the top, we have got insanity going on to get to. It feels like we've taken the summer off a little bit. It feels like, been a couple weeks here on the show, getting down to the beach, school's out for summer, markets are a little wonky, and then bam, we got an assassination attempt and all hell breaks loose. And the conspiracy theories are running rampant. We got to try to piece all of this apart. I don't know how to make sense of any of it, but it is weird.
If your job is to sweep buildings and protect people, you got to have a lot of hard questions to answer in these coming days. But like you said, this was the weekend that was going to be pivotal no matter what, because there was going to be a VP announcement regardless of all these other actions that occurred. And the VP announcement, and the reason why we're even talking about this for our listeners, is because we know that this election cycle, we kept talking about, Bitcoin's going to be on the ballot for the last year. And it really hasn't, because there have been all these other things. But then slowly but surely, this narrative has been creeping up of a pro-crypto, anti-crypto stance in politics. Like, is it possible that one side is pro and one side is anti? What's going to happen? And then there's an announcement that we have Mr. Vance, who is the new vice president nominee for the ticket, the GOP ticket. And we know that Mr. Vance has deep, deep ties in Silicon Valley. So that to me was already one of the stories swirling around. Like, is it going to be Rubio? Is it going to be Vance? Is it going to be whomever? Because all of those people are not created equal. And Vance is one who's very much involved in the crypto space and has ties to venture capitalists in the Valley and so forth. So to me, it was an interesting weekend. And then all of a sudden, now we have the chaos of how in the world, despite what your politics are, let's just say it outright. This is not a country that decides things with violence. So that's not who we are. And so to really have a stop, was all look in the mirror, like, what are we doing here? Moment was my moment over the weekend. But then as that kind of all filters away into the convention, off we start the next March to November. I was like, wow, this really does change the narrative of this election cycle. And talk about stealing the narrative. But in that one fell moment, the narrative has now been stolen, handed to a group of people to take it and run with it. So where it goes from here, I don't know. But that this weekend, I think, was a tipping point for many, many decisions that were going to be made by many, many people. And already we're seeing markets respond. And it's kind of, like you said, it's insanity.
It's
unchecked
absolutely insanity. I mean, I was in DC last week here. The Gallup organization hosted an event with financial regulators, innovators in and around the NATO summit. So you have to imagine last week, here in DC, anyone and everyone who needs to cut a deal with the US, anyone and everyone who's trying to do business in or with the United States was here. Hell, China even debuted the pandas back, right? The pandas came back to the zoo. That's how it started.
Back.
They're back all of a sudden.
How long were they on vacation?
I'm not quite sure, but it is over. It is over, and the pandas are now back in their place. And all these folks then made the other 6-hour trek from California over here to DC, people from around the world. And the talk from Senator Loomis, the elected officials, the regulators, the FDIC, the CFPB, these guys on stage talking about crypto and crypto legislation and new policies that are being brought forward, mostly by Senator Loomis and Gillibrand. And I then see, then there was this week where everyone was talking about Biden and everyone was talking about a poor performance. And again, bam, the narrative completely shifted with an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. And now here's what things get really interesting. Today we're recording. It is Tuesday, July 16th. Two things. One, the SEC has just come out and said that Ethereum ETFs can plan to start trading next week. They're giving a heads up this time. It's not a surprise. And we're going to give you actually a couple days heads up. Next Tuesday, it looks like they've been given, quote, the SEC tells Ethereum ETF issuers fund can start trading next Tuesday. The issuers have been asked to submit their final S1 documents by Wednesday. You watch the SEC drop all kinds of legislation last week, just out the door. Those deals are done. And guess where former President Donald J. Trump is traveling to next Wednesday? None other than the largest Bitcoin conference in the United States, in the heart of America, in Nashville. Trump will give a speech at the Bitcoin conference, which will mark a pivotal moment for crypto. He is stealing the narrative. Biden is old and outdated. I'm an American hero with my fist in the air. Fight, fight, fight. Crypto, Bitcoin, we need it. We need it. And Trump's going to show up in Nashville and markets will be pumping. ETFs will be raging. Markets will be soaring. And who will be riding high? None other than Donald J. Trump.
And the timing that you described is like, to me, it's the sort of sweetest little ingredient in their sauce, because what everyone is trying to do is just trying to, smooth things out, tell their version of the story, own, again, this narrative. And all the people who aren't full Bitcoin maxis are trying everything in their power to make this conversation about crypto more than about Bitcoin, right? There's like so much confusion in so many people's minds of the vocabulary and the parlance, what's really going on. So with Donald Trump at the Bitcoin conference next Wednesday, right, which is, what day is that? That's the 24th. Let's not forget that the spot ETS were just allowed to start trading the day before. Okay, right. Let's get those out in the market the day before the Bitcoin conference, because we want to start pulling some air out of the Bitcoin story if you're an Ethereum person. And then why give a heads up? Why give the 7 days, right? When has the SEC ever given anyone a heads up? You and I have chased press releases off of IRS and SEC, or just generally .gov websites on Fridays at 5 o'clock, on Saturdays sometimes. But no, this time it's on a Tuesday morning when everyone's literally glued to the news because they want to know more about why and what from the weekend. Okay, you have 1 week. Well, that's convenient because, gosh, ACH, rules for moving cash around usually says if you want to move your $500,000 that you want to buy Ether with, you need 7 days for it to clear. So they're like, hey, everybody, if you're in the fiat market and you need some time to move all your slow snail cash around, now's the time, because by the way, next Tuesday, boom, pour money into the market. And then, boom, we're at the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin, basically it's going to turn into a Bitcoin rally. It's called a conference. but just the fact that the politicians are there, because you already know Robert Kennedy's going. He's always there.
Oh,
He's
and that
be
phone
there.
call. Did you see this? Talk about more conspiracy theories, but the phone call to Robert Kennedy and the timing of that. Why is that who he's talking to? Every crypto conference I have been at in the past year has had a Robert Kennedy van set up with a couple of guys out there handing out flyers talking about crypto. So,
yeah, I mean, you get shot on stage or someone shoots you on stage. And then the first person you call the next day is you call him Bobby, Bitcoin Bobby. And just encourage him to stay in the race.
Good, Bobby. We're still good. I'll be there next week.
I'll see you in Nashville, Bobby.
That's it.
I mean, talk about how just the actions of all of those involved on these stages are such that it really, unfortunately, does fuel the conspiracy theories pretty well, especially when there are phone calls that are made and that are recorded, because for security they are, and they're just deleted. Like they just disappear somehow. But they weren't evidence, so it didn't matter. I mean, not yet. I don't understand how it is that secure lines that are recorded just have things that don't get deleted just arbitrarily. That to me is a very strange thing. Whether or not that call happened or not is sort of one thing, but the fact that things are just being deleted because people don't like the optics of it is very. It makes it really hard to trust anything that you see on the news, to be honest.
Well, and the AI narrative fuels that of not being able to tell what's real or not. I haven't gone down these rabbit holes on this Kennedy video because I think it was just today that this thing came out. But, I watched like 30 seconds of it, and I did have a question of like, is this a Donald Trump impersonator on the other end of the phone? And there's some benefit to Bobby Kennedy to play it as though it were Trump. But
there would be a benefit to Bobby Kennedy to get a call from Trump. So yeah, I could see it being fake for sure.
Right. And again, but it's not AI, but it kind of plays into it. Could it have been? Could it have, it is summertime. It is hot as hell across the country. It is the political climate is hotter than it has ever been. I don't believe on the surface that we know everything about the assassination attempt. I mean, it's not a statement. That's not a charged statement. We don't know everything. And the moment after we heard it, I said to my wife, I was like, we will never know the full truth. And I said that, and I said it kind of matter of factly, and knowingly at the same time that something's not right. It's the overall piece of that. I mean, I'll come back to this guy was in a BlackRock commercial. So BlackRock literally had talked to this kid before. Somebody, some producer, some television editor had cast this guy, this would-be assassin, a year prior in a BlackRock commercial. It's just weird to me that now there's this immediate connection between the guy who tried to assassinate Trump and the world's largest asset manager who's just bought up more Bitcoin than anybody else in the world. And I don't know how to make sense of it. I don't know what could even be true in that.
Well, it's a question of what people want to be true is also another thing that influences truth, right?
Sure.
And like you said, there are so many details in life. Like we talk about things that are stranger than fiction. In everyone's family and everyone's life, there are things that come up in series of events that unfold that we all say, if someone ever wrote this down and made a movie, no one would believe it. And you kind of chuckle to yourself and say, life is stranger than fiction. But it's really hard in this example, when it's so public, to untangle, like you say. Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been shown a BlackRock commercial. Maybe I'm not in the demo or whatever, but I don't even imagine where that would appear. But maybe it appears on the East Coast regularly or whatever. Second, do financial institutions often go into schools and get classrooms of kids as the background for a commercial that was shot not that long ago? I mean, don't you just hire a bunch of actors who look like kids in schools or whatever? So you had a team of people who were on the ground effectively casing the joint, if you will. And then all the investments that BlackRock makes all around the world. And we've traced it back to things like the economic hitman of how do you move money and what do you do to move markets and who calls who and when. And if a 20-year-old who isn't trained, I mean, ostensibly by anybody but the internet, is able to buy a ladder, get a gun, and get up on a roof with people filming and saying, hey, there's a guy up on the roof. And then a minute later starts shooting, would suggest that someone knew something. But again, let's not go so far down the rabbit hole of the conspiracy theories. But what happened was insane.
Yeah.
People were hurt. It was a real situation. People were killed, and there is now a new narrative, which just like without missing a beat within 1 week from this past weekend, suddenly all SEC stopgaps and log jams. The Gary Gensler, who was so powerful, it felt like up until the summer, now seemingly has zero power. And if we know the model that's going to happen next week, we should be getting updates from the news that say inflows of spot Ether ETFs are, crossing $1 billion a day. We're going to start getting the news like we heard with the Bitcoin spot ETF. Where is the money coming from that's flowing in? Is it lateral from other Bitcoin funds? Is it actually new money coming in from outside sources? Is it retail investor money that's flowing in? But there's going to be a surge of interest in this. And I mean, just like the way news cycles go so quickly, as fast as this all came, I feel like by this time next week, it might be the last thing on the news page that everyone's talking about, because there will be so much more to discuss as the wave of conferences and political rallies, and then the big question marks over what happens with Biden and does he continue or step down, et cetera. So there's going to be this incredible amount of FUD and news cycles that will be very good at kind of covering up everything that we're going to want to talk about, which is about cryptocurrency, Web3, and AI. Because given everything that's happening right now, you don't hear a lot about AI really yet. You're hearing about all the stopgaps in place that the social media companies are going to use to prevent synthetic content. But there's no air in the room to even hear that anymore. All we hear is now the events of this past weekend and now the gearing up of the campaign trail. And I'm starting to feel like we're going to have a lot of the really important stories that we're tracking buried even further. So that's why we're going to have to dig deeper and deeper to get underneath this global macro.
I'm looking at my girl, Eleanor Terrett, a couple of tweets just to give her a shout out. Trump's VP pick, JD Vance, holds somewhere close to $250,000 in Bitcoin, according to his latest financial disclosures. Pretty interesting to me.
Isn't that like less than 5 Bitcoin though?
I mean, you think that's all he's got? I doubt it.
I mean, that's the thing with it, what they're saying. I mean, because that's like, that sounds like a lot, but I don't know.
The other one I find super interesting is that next week, Donald Trump is holding a fundraiser at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. It is $844,000 per person, or $60,000 per person for just the reception and not the photo. He is going to get, this is from Washington Post reports, that David Bailey has promised to host a $15 million fundraiser for Donald Trump in Nashville next week when he headlines the Bitcoin conference. And there's a link on this invitation that says, if you plan to contribute via digital currency, please click here. So check your wallets, people. Guard your seed phrases, because the scams will be rampant next week in terms of digital currency donations, right as the market's pumping. Everybody feels like they got a little extra ETH in their pocket, a little extra XRP, a little extra ETH and BTC. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening.
Well, and so just to bring it back to a little of the AI talk, because I think there was a good segue there with old Bitcoin Bobby, as we call Robert Kennedy, the candidate. There is this concern that content, media, video, photo, audio will be synthesized, will be created by AI, and manipulated by humans, obviously, but sort of designed to trick us into believing it's the sound of or the actual video of real candidates. And just last week, and I sent you a couple of these, a couple of new apps just rolled out. They're in beta but that allow you to create custom voices and then create full conversational chatbots with those voices. And then you can give them personas. So you are now able to write a light text description as the persona of who this individual is. So I might say, this is a candidate running for president. This is their motivation. They're pro these things. And it could be what the candidates actually are for or not, just whatever I decide the persona is. And then for the voice, all I need to do is record more or less a 15-second snippet of either myself talking, you talking, or someone, a human talking, a candidate, a politician, and then feed that into the system. And based on the parsing of the 15 seconds, it's not always perfect. You really need a good, rich sentence of words and sounds, but it's pretty close. And this is in beta to where then you create a version of that persona that you can talk to, and you can record the conversation with that persona. And in theory, could publish it. And again, we're talking about some very early days beta apps, and they're quite good. So I think we are all seeing a path where, I mean, synthetic content is not going to be something that is, let's call it an anomaly as we roll into this election. It's going to start to be the norm, the noise that we're swimming through. We think of like when you go to the mailbox today, right? And you collect the mail each day. Is there anything in the mail that's important? But it's mostly junk, right? There may be one thank you card and that one package you ordered, but by and large, 90% of your USPS mail is completely irrelevant information that's designed to trick you into giving someone else money or to go buy something, right? Is to have you become a consumer. That's what the mail does. So imagine that as the metaphor for what's now being layered on this new world of AI, which you're going to go into the internet. 90% of what you see that you're not really actively searching for is going to be junk media, synthetic stuff that's going to try to get you to spend your money and or just try to straight up fish you and take your money. But it's not going to be actual content. So how are we going to, I know we're just a small voice in the world, but to educate people to say, look, you literally cannot trust anything that you see online. And it's going to start to force people to have to go. Hence, like you just said, this cost, you're going to have to go see real people in real life at real events and conventions and rallies in order to get any semblance of what is a quote unquote real truth. You cannot even trust something you see as a replay played to you on a video on your phone. So
I
huge
think that
AI
is,
implications.
Yeah, the sort of post-truth era. And I'll make two connections here. One, bring it back to politics and Donald Trump. But as you were talking about AI and making this bridge, I looked up what Trump was talking about AI, and it looks like he's drafting up an AI made in America, what they're calling like an AI Manhattan defense plan. So now talk about all those backdoor meetings that are happening. It's not
talk
just
about using words like Manhattan, which are highly loaded.
Exactly, and we know that there are implications in terms of artificial intelligence on the battlefield. We've covered that here for the last year on this podcast about the basically training the bots to be able to fight each other and to understand where you put the human in that loop. We know that the big AI companies, and so think about why AI may be quiet right now is because when you are in this moment of uncertainty with who the US president is going to be in November, you have to understand post-November what your options are either way. If I'm Microsoft, I have to have a plan for my defense business, my line of business, that's going to appeal to both administrations. And I have to understand what's important to both administrations when it comes to their use of artificial intelligence, how they want to regulate it, their use of cryptocurrency, and how they want to regulate digital assets, how they see those market formations, not to mention, human rights and abortion and jobs and all the other issues. But just to put, at the top of the ticket there, defense spending is the biggest thing, that the U.S. spends money on. So of course, all these guys right now are gatekeeping. A lot of the video production AIs, they're not coming out of Sora. It's not released, but you can get the Chinese knockoffs of it. Of course you can. because I think that the US based companies are waiting to see, as long as they can post November, so that they're not having to answer questions or deal, I think, with some of the regulatory uncertainty, whether that's in the financial markets or it's in the AI space. And especially when it comes to defense, I think those two things combined, you're talking about cryptographic security and how we're going to share information across departments. Well, there definitely are blockchain and decentralized zero knowledge protocols that are being discussed and brokered and paid for, and how that money is flowing and who's building those systems and where Microsoft deploys them and who they sell them to are all in question right now. Or at least in flux.
And the influence that you're describing, like there's this, it's like I don't want to use the word dangerous. It's like there's a line of sensitivity. I believe it's being walked and has been by a number of different luminaries in the AI Web3 space. And you have on one side of the line, folks like Sam Altman, folks like Toner, was it Wendy Toner? I forget her name.
Ellen
Toner, where there is this a little bit of a Chicken Little type of a response, which is, hey, everyone, you may not know it, but the sky is falling. If left unchecked, AI is going to destroy life on Earth as we know it. Just look at the movies. Haven't you seen them? It's called The Creator. It's called Dead Reckoning, Mission Impossible 7, Part 1. AI is going to be smarter than us. Oh, you're not old enough? That's right. It was in Terminator. It was in, like, let's name some more movies where computers become sentient. They decide humans are no longer needed and they eradicate us, right? This is the kind of this Hollywood driven narrative from the old days, today, to current, but is like trying to raise an alarm bell, perhaps in a way that is a little too significant, because as you kind of follow that arc of that line, well, what happens? Well, if you start to get a lot of people who are powerful, who aren't in technology and aren't in Hollywood, along the same talk track of what the AI is a matter of national security. AI is something that the Department of Defense should potentially own. AI is a, quote, weapon, if we think of it that way, or maybe it's a weapon that's sort of used as a security against other things. Well, if you start to couch and position everything like that, you can see how easy it is for people of the right mind to say, well, this needs to be brought into the fold of military spending. And now there's just an unlimited budget. So when Sam Altman says, I need $6.5 trillion to make AI chips, and I'm going to the Middle East to get the money, there's a whole lot of people here who are saying, well, hang on a second.
Whoa. We
could fund this. It just needs to be a matter of national security. And we're already seeing it kind of steer that way. Is it going to be defense against attacks against our stock market? Yes. Will it be used as AI to decide where terrorist cells are to attack? Yes. It's going to be yes for almost everything we're hearing. And it sounds like right now they're trying to move that conversation of AI to that side of things, military style, and no longer, oh, it's about social media and fake images and video. It's like it seems like the narrative is saying that's just scratching the surface. And like, of course, there's going to be fake videos and images, but you can tell the difference. You're a human, right? Haha, don't be so silly. By the way, we're funding this big time out of the Pentagon because we're going to own American AI and we're going to actually use it for military defense. And that's going to suddenly become the synonymous thing. Again, stealing the narrative away from kind of what the beauty of what I think AI and Web3 can bring to all of us and the innovation is now going to be just turned into sort of a loaded new apparatus of Space Force.
Oh, goodness. I mean, yeah. When do we get the metaverse force? That's
what happened to the metaverse.
It's dead.
Like, where did the metaverse go? I mean,
it's in Nashville next week. That's
you can put on an Apple Vision Pro and you'll see the same stuff you saw a year ago.
I mean, it definitely
has not
show
us anything anymore. It hasn't moved. Is it paused? I feel like the metaverse got paused. No one wants to go in the metaverse because now the real world is too interesting.
I don't even know where to take this. I sent you another link talk about Apple, talk about NVIDIA. These guys,
yeah.
the latest article I just texted you that these guys used thousands of swiped YouTube videos to train AI. So that sounds like a little bit of a shot across the bow from Google out towards these other big guys, Apple, Nvidia, and Anthropic, saying you guys used our YouTube videos. So that narrative kind of popping back up. We heard it, maybe almost 8 months ago, maybe longer, with the New York Times and Sam Altman and OpenAI. And we haven't even pieced apart Microsoft stepping down from OpenAI's board. Like, talk about that defense spending. Maybe there's a connection point in there of like why they need to be removed from that piece of where OpenAI sits, because they have other interests, or their interests are aligned elsewhere, or allows them to do other things. There's so much there. I don't know. It feels a little bit like, I like something you said a little bit ago of this narrative is likely going to change by next week. And I can't wait to find out what the next thing is. And it likely will be Bitcoin and Nashville. And I would almost rather be talking about that than all of the stuff that we just unpacked, because it is so heavy to try to make sense of just the stuff in the past 2 weeks. Trying to piece it apart, this shift in the narrative, it just feels really dramatic. And we're, midway through July, we're halfway through summer here. We've got only a couple weeks left before we will really be like, Congress has, 5 weeks left in session before the election. How much more can they possibly get done? I don't know what they're going to take up, but
it would stand to reason that we still have ahead of us at least some form of a conversation about alien technology. Usually in the summer, we get peppered with some interesting congressional hearings. With any luck, there'll be a little bit more about alien tech. But as you were saying, looking forward to the next thing, as we were talking just about a week ago about, Microsoft, and I think that that's a really significant point that kind of got brushed under the rug. But Microsoft was basically removed from the board of OpenAI. And to just play it back, for all of those listeners, Microsoft was the major investor in OpenAI, really driving that roadmap. And there was great consternation with the leaving of the CEO, Sam Altman, or the firing or deposition of, and then returning and coming back in this whole weird boardroom circus. And then the deal announced with Apple. And Apple has, interest in having OpenAI technology, ChatGPT integration. Apple is a number one competitor of Microsoft, or they are in the top 5 of each other. And what does that mean? And you start to look at these global companies, and I wonder how is it that the United States government, how does the United States government view our largest American companies, who are American but are global entities? Microsoft, Apple, Google have partnerships in many countries, have deals and regulatory decisions that are, adhered to in many countries with many foreign powers. Google's phones, Apple's phones, partially built in China. You have resources that are negotiated for in various countries for the production of servers to create co-location facilities to run the internet as America knows it. It makes it confusing, I think, for the way that large American companies interact with, effectively play with the American government. We think of the American government as U.S. only, but of course we know the American government acts like a global company. It has offices, call them bases, or embassies all around the world. And there's, I think, going to be this kind of focus on, ratcheting on, down on all these U.S. companies as we head towards this election cycle, and people really focusing on espionage, global security. Every few weeks there's a story about some employee being taken out and investigated because they were a foreign national working at an American company, but then somehow releasing sensitive data to someone else. Their entire divisions are being laid off right now in American companies. You don't hear a lot about it, but I have one family and one friend who are affected. Layoffs happening across the Googles of the world, the NVIDIAs of the world, the Microsofts of the world. And what do they say? They say that the top line narrative is AI and our new investment in AI has, that we have reductions in forces because of advantages and scale and optimization we have via AI. But I wonder, is this just a culling? Has there been a mandate that says, hey, from the US government, from the DOJ, we have reason that, look, there was just a release of data from a Google employee who was a Chinese national. There was a release of data from some Apple person who's working somewhere else. It happens all the time. It may not be some massive sensitive thing, but it was something. And there's maybe telling them, hey, you need to start to lock down the number of people who have access to sensitive, important information about your technology and your services that has real import to U.S. citizens' data. We can't have a breach. And here's a way for you to go in and just wipe any deck you want clear and just use this little AI flag to say why you did it, even though it really is more of a matter of national security. I feel like the AI flag is now being flown to cover up a lot of things, and we're not even hearing about it. Literally, like people losing their jobs, and it doesn't even pop the news. I mean, Shark Week with John Cena pops higher. I'm not kidding. Like we see that story first, and then it's like, boom, 10,000 layoffs in the tech sector. So we're just swimming right now. We're swimming in a real word soup, narrative soup, and we're going to have to find the bottom of the bowl. We're going to have to dig to the bottom of the bowl, and it's going to come real quick, and I think quicker than we think.
I mean, everything you just said about kind of the insider information from companies using AI as this, maybe false flag, probably not a great word there either, but a mask for these companies, need to be profitable and I don't know. AI is going to help them. They need a reason to let these folks go, but it could be for other reasons of national security. I started to think about the insider trading. You talked about the U.S. Apple has manufacturing facilities in China. There's co-location facilities and all the money that goes in, and where senators and, none more than Nancy Pelosi to pad her own pockets based on that insider information. I thought this was interesting from a couple weeks ago, the bipartisan Senate group proposing the ban on the congressional stock trading. So there's an interesting take there in everything we just said about this kind of weird financial market. We got AI with a lot of vague or non-existent regulatory action happening. There's been no movement, since Europe got MiCA passed, and they're talking about managing digital assets and owning your digital likeness. None of that stuff has moved here in the US. The narrative has strictly moved towards crypto and blockchain and the financial markets. And there's a Senate group saying, yeah, we need to do something about this, even within our own ranks here, because JD Vance only having 250,000 of Bitcoin on the books is probably not accurate, right? And if he can set up custodial wallets for his kids and put several million Bitcoin in those wallets, does he have to put those on disclosure documents? I don't know. I don't know how crypto wallet regulatory disclosure works inside of Congress, but that
point you just made is a really good one. If I may just interrupt for 1 second, because talk about creating that smokescreen, a bipartisan push to block, what we all conventionally would consider insider trading in the stock market. Create a bipartisan bill that would prevent, at least on the surface, these individuals, a little less than 500 of them, from really doing some dirty stuff and making a lot of money. But how about you start arguing that and continue down that path while you just start loading up on various cryptocurrencies that don't count in that world, because you're actually going to be creating more legislation and regulation around that in the short term than changing anything to do with the stock market. And when you talk about, the ETH ETF, they just said, yeah, next Tuesday, guys. Well, we talked about this in our previous shows, is once you break that seal, when's the next? And we already know there's a spot Solana ETF that's already been filed. That was filed by 21 Shares, I think it's called, or it was ARK, or one of the two. If the Solana ETF gets approved, what would stop? Pick any one of 100,000 other altcoin ETFs, right, from happening. What would prevent that from happening? The thing that would prevent that from happening is the people in the government from saying no more, right? We'll do 1, we'll do 2, we'll do 3, we'll pick our 5, we'll pick our 10. We're not going to do 100,000 of them. But what about the Solana ETF is interesting? The Solana ETF, or SOL, S-O-L, is backed and powered by certain venture capitalists. One of the biggest ones who's in there is the Andreessen Horowitz Group, the A27, their crypto fund. Who are they? Well, they're friends with Vance because they all work together at the same VC and invested in the same funds. So if you think that there's not going to be a massive amount of money made on Solana spot ETFs, you're crazy, because everyone who's in the current government stands to make a boatload of money on that, because most people don't even understand what Solana is. And it's going to become just yet another like stock ticker that most people won't even understand. And that's going to start to rip. Not financial advice, but I've owned Sol for a while and have Solana and always know when, when VCs and crooked players are going to force their narrative, there's a chance that will go up. So the same token, by the same side of their mouth, they're saying, we want to talk now about all the corruption that has to do with insider stock trading. And everyone is like, oh, finally, we're going to get our, the comeuppance we've wanted. And while we all sift through that for however long, and maybe someone pays a penalty to appease the media, everyone's just going to be loading up and stuffing their pockets with all these amazing, weird crypto derivative investment products that no one understands, because they're writing the rules literally as the SEC. They're forcing them to just approve stuff as they go, laying the train track while the train is running and deciding where we're headed next. That to me feels like the crooked smokescreen.
I think you just said where we're headed next. So let's bring us home here. We have taken a couple weeks off. Good to digest the week's events as we head in the backside of July. Looking out, next week's Bitcoin conference. What's the headline coming out of that when Trump speaks? And do markets pump, and how much?
Something about how Bitcoin has and always will be an American innovation. Something along those lines, I think, is going to come out and resonate.
Bitcoin mined in America.
That's right.
On NVIDIA chips.
That's right. Maybe Elon Musk will slide in next week. He's been quiet. He recently pledged billions, I want to say, to invest in NVIDIA. You just reminded me of that. He's investing, he's doubling, tripling down on NVIDIA chips for upcoming Tesla vehicles, Tesla robots. NVIDIA is going to be one of the most important companies, and we know it. So yeah, I think that this is going to be a big week next week. I put my money on whoever is speaking, trying to steer the discussion back towards AI as an American thing. Remember, bring AI to US. That was the latest Biden administration website. Bring AI, your AI, to our United States. I think it's now going to bring your crypto to our United States. That's going to be the overarching narrative. I think by the end of next week, we're all going to believe that Abraham Lincoln invented cryptocurrency, or at least Al Gore had some hand in it.
Definitely Al Gore who invented it. I can't wait. We'll get back on track here as we head into the fall. Things are just heating up. We'll do it again. Thank you, sir.
Great talking to you.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join us next week for more news and all things Web3. Check, please.